Hi Nitish, how are you?
Hi Arpita, how are you? I'm doing good.
Good.
Thank you for asking.
I'm doing
This is
good and
wonderful.
thanks for, sorry.
This connect is amazing. It's a Mayo Connect, and it's just you starting something like this is really cool.
Thank you so much. I think it's only as good as, the participants. So thank you for accepting the invite. So can you tell me a little bit about how the lockdown is treating you maybe? Let's start with that.
Absolutely. I think a very straight on, a very tough question to start combating with, but I think looking at the global pandemic situation, lockdown for us, particularly in New York City, has been rough, right? We've only heard, and I think back in the days in school when we heard about people standing in lines back in Soviet Union to buy a loaf of bread, you're actually witnessing that. Going to a store and they're not letting you in into a store because the store has reached maximum capacity. It's interesting right now because we've not come to terms with it. The day we come to terms with it, we will realize how what impact it is. But at the same time, I think it's allowing you to stop and really reflect on how you lived your life, what was more important, what was not very important. Um, New York City, Manhattan is completely quiet right now, right? Times Square, which was bubbling and buzzing, is absolutely empty. And it's funny that people are like saying that now animals are coming to see you instead of you going to see the animals. And what takes us back here is take a step back and see how this has impacted the world, particularly in my industry of hospitality, restaurants, deliveries,
Yeah,
conferences, offices, everything is shut down. So
that's
I
right.
think the question goes back is it really needed? Maybe the answer is yes, but what's the impact?
That's right. That's right. So, very well said. Because hospitality, which is why I wanted you, on the list of guests, because hospitality is one industry that is obviously taking a beating. And
Huge.
Compass as a company, I'm sure is figuring out how things are going to pan out post this. Firstly, you don't even know when this is going to end, and then secondly, what after this, right? So can you throw some light on what were the first few things that the company decided to do as a
I think
result of this? Yeah.
unfortunately we had to kind of really let go of a lot of people. That was the first decision we made. I think a new common term that has been in use recently has been a light switch. Right? It was a light switch for everybody. Nobody anticipated back in December when this news started bubbling up from China. Nobody, I think, in North America had even far-fetched anticipated 4 months down the line that they would not have a job because they read the headlines about what was happening in China. So first and foremost thing is people losing their positions. I think what we did very well, and many different companies in America, including Compass Group, have done is instead of laying off people, we have laid them off, but we have given them medical benefits. So the government is supporting them from a financial standpoint. There's some support. I'm not saying it's 100% support, but there is some support. But I think medical benefits, at least in North America, is very big. The second part is we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks or 2 months or 6 months. I think there's always a ray of hope. Things will get better. I mean, as humans and as social beings, we will come back together, right? We will rebuild. We have to. We don't have an option. With that hope, we're hoping that things will start to ease down in the next few months.
Actually, this is very interesting that you said that, the company has laid off a lot of people because in India, whoever I've spoken to so far, the immediate reaction is to figure out ways to not lay off people. Isn't that a very different approach to things? Because here, everybody, in fact, unanimously said that they are looking to cut costs first in other ways and make laying off as the last resort. So what do you have to say about that?
I think my first reaction was exactly surprising as well. That is layoff the only option. But when we actually did the calculations, we realized that having a government support from a financial standpoint is furthermore helpful for an individual versus earning their own salaries. The equation at a certain level of number was
Oh, wow.
perhaps a little bit more. So I'll give you an example, right? If somebody was earning about their annual salary of $40,000, hypothetically, right?
Sure.
With government support, they were somewhere around $40,000. So the burden on the organization was limited. The government has actually supported with that burden for the time being. Now that's my
Wow.
word. That's
This
how
is
I
this is
look at
the
it.
support they're giving for people who are getting laid off, is it? Right?
Correct, correct. But again, it's at a certain number and a certain slab rate, right? And it's not only with Compass Group, but it's also independent workers, delivery people. They've quite frankly lost all their positions. The restaurants have been shut down. What do they do? Right? They still have to go back and feed their family and bring food back home. So in that perspective, I would say that the government is strong enough. How long and how they can sustain it for a year, I don't think so. But can they sustain it for the next 4 months? That's exactly what they are projecting and indicating. So it kind of reassures people that there is something, if not everything. And on the same time, I think I was reading about Taj Group of Hotels, IHCL, in India, who has said that they will protect salaries for people being affected, or Tata Group essentially. And I worked for Tata previously, so I mean, reading those kind of things are truly amazing.
Yeah, in fact, the Taj Hotel has opened up their
Yeah,
properties to medical staff in our country. So,
same here. Four Seasons in New York has opened. The hotel which was known to sell its rooms for about $1,000 a night,
hmm.
essentially is offering
That's
rooms to
that's
medical.
pretty amazing, actually, you know.
Yeah.
So in terms of the company looking forward, right, looking ahead, what do you see the hospitality industry really doing from here on, and where do you see it going, and how do you see it panning out?
Again, I think there has been changes, and the changes were made very quickly, right? So, if I speak from an industry spectrum, what I've observed right now and very recently is the trends of, instead of having open meals, now there are boxed meals that are coming up, right? So, if and when we recover from this, and there will be a need. Of course, there will be. Perhaps they might not be in need of 2,000 meals, but they might be in need of 1,000 meals. And if there are 1,000 meals, will they be now on a buffet platter, or will it be a per person individually packed? And I think the direction right now in the interim will be in the aspect of prepackaged meals, right? So the kitchens will still operate. I think the scale will go down. It's quite evident. People will gather less. Conferences will happen less. Weddings will happen less. Bars and pubs will operate less, but it will still happen, right?
What about the import export that the industry undertakes? Because there's a lot of import export that happens for hospitality, right? Logistically, and even the equipments, and so much, even resources. So what's your take on that, and how do you see that going? Is it going to become very localized, or how is it going to work?
Again, I think through my lens, I see that it will be. I think from a global leadership standpoint, I think focus would be to support a local economy. What are our local farms and local places where we kind of can source meat? Why do we want to go to a national producer? There might be a higher cost to it, but again, I think it is an understanding that we're supporting a community and a supportive community around us versus going on and getting something on a mass bulk.
So I think sustainability, is something that people will seriously start looking at thanks to
It is a
coronavirus. I
yes.
think that's a
You're
good
right.
thing.
It has always been a priority. I mean, at least off late in New York City, I've seen the aspect of sustainability. All the restaurants which are kind of really featuring about farm to table concept. But
Hmm.
sometimes I laugh because in India, farm to table is really the concept, but back here it's one of the super cool urban concept. I think it will go back to the same level. I'm connecting with so many different catering companies who are independent companies who lost business overnight, right? And it was a situation for them for the first 2 weeks, but then they readapted themselves. It's all about reinvention. I think right now the focus is about reinventing your business model, and trying to relook at things. Opportunities will exist, demands will be there, right? People are still continuing to have meals. It's just how they're going to happen. That's where we have to figure it out.
Which is the behavioral aspect, right? Which brings us to that aspect of behavioral sciences and uh,
I think it is. I think in this kind of a global pandemic situation, what has happened is that I would not say it for everybody, because I think that's incorrect for me to say that. But I think the most important part is that we're all in it together, and we all have to fight it out together. right? So I have seen and I have observed that there has been a human to human understanding that I need to stand in a line. I need to do this and I need to be careful about it. Initially, because I think our mentality back in the US is if something adverse is coming in, if you have the ability, hoard things, right? But when I go now to the supermarkets, people are buying what is important and necessary for them versus loading their shopping cart with, 10 gallons of milk. They're not. They are now more concerned about their fellow mates or their neighborhood, and if there is a problem, they're all coming together to uplift that.
I think probably the biggest takeaway could be that greed will probably go out, but which is what you just said, that people, if they're not hoarding in some way, they're giving up greed, right?
They are. I think people have become very conscious about each other. They have understood the impact it is. There will be a percentage of people who will not care about it, who will come up with the idea of that, this is all man-made. But quite frankly, it is not. If it was, then it could have been controlled, and it is not controlled right now. So I'm just hopeful that this will really reunite people, reunite families. This whole idea of the quarantine time and staying at home. If you go back into, I mean, I again associate a lot of things going back into our school days or back in India, in a particular village, right? They lived off their farm, they lived off their relationships around their household, and people were happy. And perhaps this might be a reason why US numbers of happiness may go up. Because I've always heard an American person turning around who's traveling to India turns around and says, when I go to India, I see poverty, but I also see happy people.
Perhaps gross happiness quotient instead of GDP, huh? Just like
Correct.
Bhutan.
Yes. Because you know what? You have the time, you're focusing about it, you're thinking about things which really impact you on a day-to-day basis. And that will, I mean, I think I'm far more thankful today versus what I was 2 months back.
Yeah, just to wrap this up, what would be your key message to your industry folks who are watching this, and the ones who are feeling extremely idle also and feeling very lost, and both from the American perspective and just overall global perspective?
I think one is a personal message that I think this is a time, unfortunately or fortunately, we will never have in future. For the good reasons, we should not have it. But for the good reasons that we have right now, I think we should try to take advantage of it, right? So if personally at homes we are all sitting, rather than being upset about what has happened, I think, can we recultivate ourselves? Can we reinvent ourselves? And the second thing is, this may happen in future as well. And when this happens, are we prepared? Are we thinking about a better future? I think one of the things that I learned back in school is we're not the owners of our environment. We're just the borrowers, right? We have borrowed land from our future generations. We have borrowed life out of things, resources out of our future generations. Will we be careful?
Thank you so much. I think that was very well said. And you gave some very interesting inputs in terms of how behavior can change in the hospitality industry. I mean, no buffets versus, individual meals.
I think it's a short period of
It's
time.
a crazy thought, but very, very plausible. Very
Yeah,
plausible.
it's a short period of time. I think what will happen in the next 1 year, we really need to look at like the short term and the long term aspects. But in the short term world, there will be huge adaptations, and we should embrace them because that will only help us do better.
Great. Thank you so much for speaking to me. This was really
Thank you.
great.
Thanks a lot. Really nice speaking to you. Take care.
See you. Take care. Stay safe.
Around. Thank you. You too. Bye bye.